In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, to whom we all have to turn back. Honorable listeners and respectable audience, you know that we have started a series of linguistics. In linguistics, we started the chapter that is known as pragmatics. Pragmatics is the study of language in use, or the study of language in context. Just before yesterday, I told you about reference, that what is reference and its types. Like reference, it has three types: anaphoric reference, cataphoric reference, and exaphoric reference. Yesterday, I told you about anaphoric reference. That anaphoric reference happens when a word, a pronoun, or a phrase, it refers to a name, a noun, which is earlier mentioned in a conversation or in writing. Today, I'm going to teach you about cataphoric reference. What is cataphoric reference? How cataphoric reference happens, and what is the example of cataphoric reference to understand it practically. Listeners and readers, cataphoric reference happens when a word, a pronoun, or a phrase, when it refers to a noun which is mentioned in a sentence or in a conversation later on. I'm repeating. Cataphoric reference happens when a word or a pronoun or a phrase refers to a noun that is mentioned later in a conversation or writing or in a text. I think this will not clear until and unless I provide a practical example and then I identify cataphoric reference. For example, one example of cataphoric reference is even though he sits at the front of his class, Professor, for example, Professor Iqbal still does not know Aslam. See now, even though he sits at the front of his class, Professor Iqbal still does not know Aslam. I'm repeating. Even though he sits at the front of his class, Professor Iqbal still does not know Aslam. Now you know, I'm talking about cataphoric reference. As I mentioned in the definition, that cataphoric reference refers to or it happens when a word, a pronoun, or a group of words or phrase, when it refers to a noun which is mentioned later in a text or conversation. Like you see, even though this he is cataphoric reference. One. Another thing is that this his is also cataphoric reference. How this he is cataphoric reference? It is because this he refers later on. This he letters on to whom? To Aslam, even though he sits at the front of his class. So this he refers to Aslam, even though he sits at the front of his class. And this his refers to professor. Once again I'm repeating. Even though he sits at the front of his class. Who sits at the front of his class? Aslam. Professor Iqbal still does not know Aslam. So this his class and this second his refers to Professor Iqbal. So this is the example of Cataphoric reference. Hope that this topic is clear to you. Inshallah, in the next lecture we will discuss about exophoric reference, and then that will be the ending of the topic reference. Thank you.